Okay, so today we worked on the first part of completing the square. And just to go over the general rules for it, we start with a standard form equation, and then we're going to move this constant over to this side. So just as they've done, they've subtracted, and now they have 4x squared minus 4x equals -2. Then we want to figure out what we can put here. We look at this middle term, we take half and square it. So half of 4 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So we're going to add 4 here, and what you do to one side of the equals, you have to do to the other. So we put 4 there. So now we have x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals -2x plus 4. So we want to remember the rule is to take that middle term, you take the b, okay, and then we're going to half it, so we're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to square the answer to get the c here, okay? So 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4, we add 4 to both sides. So we're going to do some simplifying. -2 plus 4 is 2. So now we want to factor that. We have a negative and we have positive. This is a perfect square. So if we've been paying attention in class, we should know that's just x minus 2 squared, and then we have equals 2. And then remember the opposite of squaring something. So if I want to find the opposite of x squared, we square root it. The square root of x squared is x, right? So we square root both sides, because what you must do to one, you must do to the other to balance it out. So the square root of x minus 2 squared, that square root takes that square away and just leaves you with x minus 2. And they have plus or minus the square root of 2. Then we're just solving for x. So again, we're going to add that over. And so we'll have 2 plus the square root of 2 and 2 minus the square root of 2. And then we can put that in our calculators and get an estimate of what those roots are. So we want to start with that. They just rounded down here. All right, so let's go ahead and try it. So let's look at that. We're going to skip down to number 8. So the first thing we want to do is subtract the 4 over, because we want to just be left with x squared minus 6x. So we subtract the 4, and so I'm going to be left with x squared minus 6x, because this equals 0. Bring the equals down, and 0 minus 4 is -4. So then, to complete the square, we want to take half of this b value and square it. So I want to take half of 6 and then square it. Sorry, we just want the 6, not the negative. So half of 6 is 3. 3 squared would give us 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. So now I have x squared minus 6x plus 9. But if we're going to add 9 to the left side of the equals, we have to add 9 to the right. So it's going to be -4 plus 9. So now we know that's a perfect square. So again, when I factor that, that's just going to give me x minus 3, because the square root of 9 is 3 squared. Okay? And remember, that's the same thing as x minus 3 times x minus 3. And I know I've done it right if this multiplies to the trinomial. So x times x is x squared. -3 times -3 is 9. And we'll have -3x and -3x for -6x. So that's going to equal -4 plus 9, which is 5. Then we're trying to find the roots, trying to find x. So that's a squared. So to undo the squared, we're going to do the square root. But remember, we have to do both sides. And we've already talked about how this is plus or minus. So this is going to give me x minus 3, because that square root is going to take this to the second power away, equals plus or minus the square root of 5. And then to solve, we're just going to add the 3 over. So my roots are going to be 3 plus the square root of 5, and then 3 minus the square root of 5. And make sure in all of this that you're not losing sight of what the root is. We're trying to find, this is a squared, so that's a quadratic, so we're trying to find what the roots, the zeros, the solutions are, or where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so if we're thinking about steps, first we're going to bring that constant over, then we're going to take half and square the middle term, add that to both sides, then we're going to square root it, and then find our roots. It's pretty straightforward. But don't lose sight of what we're doing. Remember, it's completing the square because we're finishing out a square, okay? So today we looked at when we got the problem to this stage right here. And remember, we had x squared here, and this was 6x. And then we knew x times x was x squared. And then we split this square in half, which comes with, that's why we're dividing by the 2 here, because we switched this square in half. And if we move that square in half, that means that this must be 3x here, and this must be 3x here, because 3x and 3x gives me 6x. So we took this right here, and we moved it up here. And so now, take this 3x here, and move it here. And we said, well, x times what number would give you 3x? And this would have to be 3 here. And x times what number gave you 3x here? And we said 3. And then we said we will complete the square. So we're completing the square. So now this is a 1 whole square here. And to complete the square, we just have to figure out this last little square. 3 times 3 is 9. And that's how we get this. X squared, 3x, and that's got to be a negative, right? Because it's got to add to negative 3x. So that would be negative 3x, which is 6x, negative 3x, 6x, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So essentially, we have x minus 3 and x minus 3, or x minus 3 squared. So again, this is what we were doing earlier today. There's just one more step to it. First, we have to move this over, and then we have to square root both sides. Okay, so I'm going to start you on the next one. Here again, we want to get it to where we just want to complete the square. So we want just that left, so we want to subtract the 6 over. So now we'll have x squared minus 12x equals negative 6. Now the reason we want to move this over is because as it is right now, x squared minus 12x plus 6, that is not a factorable equation. If you think about it and you try to figure out what we could put into 2 parentheses here, x and x, and then I try to think what multiplies to 6 to add to 12. Well, the highest factors I have are 6 and 1, and that will add to 12, and we got 2 and 3, that's 5. So this is an unfactorable equation. But if you put it into your calculator, x squared minus 12x plus 6, and you graph it, it has 2 roots, even though we can't factor it. So factoring is not a problem. So when we can't factor it, we have to complete the square to find these 2 roots. And we can try to use our calculators on this, but it'll be pretty tough to get exact amounts. So that's why we have to complete the square to find the exact roots. So again, we move this over, and then when we're right here, we're right back to completing the square. And so we can go through and do this, but it's a little bit easier to think, okay, half of 12 is 6, and then 6 squared is 36. So we're just going to go x squared minus 12x, and then we're going to add 36 to this side, and then we're going to add 36 to this side. So I want you to see if at this point, I would like you to try to finish it, okay? Put it in its squared form, do your square roots, and I want you to give me the square roots, or the x-intercepts, or the roots, or the zeros, or the solutions, however you want to do it, to the nearest hundredths place, both roots, okay, using this equation. And if you want, if this is making sense, or maybe it's not making sense, and you want a little trick as to how you do it, just watch this video. It has a little trick to it.
Completing the square, completing a square. Halve the x and put in brackets, subtract the square of that number there. We have completed the square.
Completing the square, completing the square. Halve the x and put in the brackets.
So if you look, they kind of short-stepped ours. We halved it and squared it and added it to both sides. They went ahead and just put it right into the parentheses there.
Subtract the square of that number there.
And then they added the square of that later.
The square.
So you have a couple different options there. Okay, so that's all you need to do. You just need to finish this one problem, problem B here, find the two roots, and then we'll go over it in class tomorrow. Good night.